Thanks for coming. This is what we've done the last couple of weeks. Write it down, keep it out of sight, make it inconvenient, use small dinnerware, visual cues. Today, Kathy, that's kind of over-covering for some reason, but dining out and the dining environment, and then we're going to look at the form of the food. Can we get that off? Well, it doesn't matter on the bottom, I suppose. So a little bit of a review. This is Glamour magazine, and it was about 10 years ago, I think, and they got an article about get to your happy weight. And my students brought this in and showed it to me, and follow these rules. And they actually got this right. They did an interview, and they said, make small changes. That's exactly what we need to do. Make small changes. Don't make big ones. They actually got it right in the interview. And then as soon as you say the words, I'm going on a diet, you've already failed. Why? Because it's sometime you're going to go off and it's temporary. So diets don't work. And so you just need to confess what you want and move forward, and you can actually lose weight. It's not an impossible goal for us to lose weight. And then they, Cooking Light called and they said, we're doing this thing on 12 healthy habits. And they asked me what I thought about it, and they ended up putting them in as the first 3. And so what it says is, don't graze, give yourself cutoff cues, make a plate change. Those are all the things that we've talked about. Doing those 3 things is extremely important in being able to lose weight. So tonight we're going to talk about beware of who you're eating with when you go out to eat. We did a study on the effects of suggestive selling. How much effect does a waitstaff have on you? Second, how much social pressure is put on you by people you're dining with? So we did a couple of studies at Eastern Illinois University and asked for a second portion if desired, or control patrons to ask for their own second. So waitstaff goes up and says, do you want more? Or just wait, the control group, and see if people ask for seconds. How much of a difference did that make? The blue is the treatment group. Do you want more seconds? And the average was about almost 2. And then if you had to ask yourself, it cut it down to 1. So waitstaff coming up to you and asking you if you want more, you have to be aware of it, because it increased consumption almost 50% when eating rolls. Pasta, the same thing, it increased it. Cookie, it almost doubled it when the waitstaff came up. It's hard for us to say, can I have another cookie? Because everybody around you is looking like, what are you doing? Are you a pig? Why are you getting another cookie? And so waitstaff coming up asking you if you want more, be aware of it and be ready to say no. And then this was even more interesting. So we had about 16 tables, 8 people at a table, and we had one person pulled away from the table, and we said to the waitstaff, when you go up and ask for second portions, these 8 tables, the first person said yes. And then these other 8 tables, the person said no. And then we looked at how much people ate around the rest of the table. And this is what happened. So when we came up and said, do you want seconds? And the first person said yes, it increased to almost 15% compared to these that said no. With beverages, it didn't make a difference much. This beverage didn't. The third beverage, it did. Breadsticks, it didn't make a difference if the first person said yes or no. Then the breadsticks, thirds, it made a difference. But what I want to show here is this second desserts. Would you like a second cookie? Now, if the first person said yes, in the black right here, it turned out that 45% of the people said, yeah, give me a cookie too. If the first person said no, the rest of the table, then it only went up by about 10%. So this is the actual result here. Lasagna went up if someone said yes, the first person said yes, the other 5 people around the table, their consumption went up 60%. With the dessert, it went up 240%. So if the first person at the table said, yes, give me another cookie, it increased the rest of the people around the table, their consumption by 240%. Now, it didn't make a difference with beverages. I don't care what's that person. He has a beverage, doesn't have a beverage. Salad, it didn't make much of a difference. Breadsticks, it didn't make much of a difference. But dessert, it did. There's so much we can learn from this. And one of the things we can learn is if you don't want to have any more seconds, you be the first one to answer when the waitstaff comes up. Because once someone has made a decision at your table, people follow like sheep. And dessert is one example of this. I don't eat wheat. And so once in a while, I go to a restaurant and they'll have a flourless chocolate cake. And I'm going, man, I can't wait until I get to that chocolate cake. I'm going to eat it. Flourless chocolate cake. And they come up and they say, would you like dessert? And someone will say, nope, he's a nutritionist. We don't eat dessert. Oh, bummer. You know, I was looking at that cake since we got in the restaurant. But you know how hard it is for someone to say, if no one else is eating dessert, say, yes, I'll eat dessert. And it's even harder as a nutritionist, say, yeah, they're not having dessert, but give me one. I want that really high fatty chocolate cake that doesn't have any flour in it. So be aware of what the people around you are doing and how much it affects how much we eat. We did something with just descriptive labels. You have no idea I had no idea until we ran these studies, how much difference a name makes in how much we eat. So we had people coming through the University of Illinois. It was a faculty staff dining area. And one week we had red beans and rice. The next week we had traditional Cajun red beans. And then we had seafood fillet the first week, and we had succulent Italian seafood fillet. All the way down the line, we had chocolate pudding. And then the next week we had satin Dutch chocolate pudding made in the home country by grandma's tender hands. Let's see what kind of a difference it made. What happened was the plain. How does it taste? It rated about 5.5. And then when we gave them a descriptive label, the assessment of how good it tastes went from 5.5 up to about 7.3. Now, the interesting thing about this, it was the same food. The food didn't change at all, just the name. And just by changing the name, the perceived taste of it went up significantly. Doesn't that scare you a little bit as a human being to realize how influenced we are by what the name of something is? And then it looked like plain name and then descriptive name. People thought it had a better texture. People thought that it had more calories. This is what made the difference between no label and label. If it was a dessert, no label didn't make much of a difference because you know what, it's chocolate and I'm going to eat it no matter what you call it, it's chocolate. But if it was fish, a main dish, this is on a 7-point scale, this is about a 2.5, and it went up to about a 6.5. It went up over 50%. So here, people thought, fish, I don't like dry fish. It chokes me and I don't like it. But why didn't you tell me it was succulent fish? I love succulent fish. It's so moist and tender. And succulent Italian seafood fillet, I love Italian. This fish is wonderful compared to the fish I had last week, and it was the same fish. We have to be aware of how much of an effect it has on what you call something. And then this was a study that my friend did in my lab, and this is California wine, expected tastiness of it, expected rating of it, tastiness of the cheese. And then what he did is he ripped the label off of the California wine, and he stuck a label on there that said North Dakota wine. And then he asked the people, how tasty do you expect this to be? And it went from a 5 down to a 2.5. It decreased by 50% just because of the name North Dakota wine. And then expected rating went down too. This is the interesting part. This is how good did the cheese taste? It's the same wine that they were having at this dinner. And you look at the California wine, they rated it pretty good at about a 4.5. And then the North Dakota wine, it dropped down to about 3.3. So the perception of the taste of the cheese was determined by what they were having it with, but it was the exact same wine. It was just a name change. And that name change made the cheese taste considerably less when it was North Dakota wine. Again, what you call something is important. And then a little bit about as we eat out, value meals, you get a little bit more for a little bit more money. The company gets more profits. We get a good deal. But is it a value to get more of something that you never needed in the first place? This is how much you get with a value meal. You get about 660 calories at McDonald's, 600 calories at Wendy's, 590 calories at Burger King. Now, is it a good deal to get something you don't need in the first place? How many of you are thinking, man, I need to get an extra 600 calories cheap. I want a good deal. Well, do you need the 600 calories? Well, no, I don't need any calories. And so we get, again, this value meal. Is it really a value to get something you never needed? No. If you want to get a value, when you're buying a house, save $10,000. You're buying a car, save $2,000. And when you're getting a burger and fries to save 95 cents, it's not worth it to get the extra calories in something you don't need in the first place. And then if you do this value meal and you do it every day and don't compensate for the calories, well, this is really good if you're trying to gain weight. You can gain 1 pound in a week. You can gain 52 pounds in a year. You can gain 3,570 pounds in a lifetime. Wow, what a deal. Just by getting the value meal every time you go out. So today what we're going to talk about then, as we're going out, is package size, as we're out, portion size. When you go to the grocery store, this study was done by Brian Wansink back in '96. And whether it's spaghetti in the yellow, Crisco oil in the black, or the blue M&Ms, if you have a small container, a medium container, or a large container, you eat more out of the large container. If you have spaghetti and you have a little box of spaghetti, you'll grab about 400 pounds. 400 pounds. You'll get about 400 calories out of that. But if you have a large box, you're going to grab 600. So you get 50% more calories in a big container. So if you get these big, family-sized things of spaghetti, you tend to grab 50% more just because of the size of the container. So beware, when you buy food at the store, if you buy these big containers, you have already made your portion decision because you will eat more when you get home. Same thing with M&Ms. You get about 50 calories here, and then if you have a large container, you eat about 150 calories. It goes up by more than 100%. That's amazing. So buy small packages. Some people say, I need to get the big package because it's less expensive. Fine. When you get home, take that big container of chips and have little Ziploc bags and just take out a handful, take out a handful, take out a handful, take out a handful. It takes about 45 seconds, zip the things up, and that big bag is now put into 10 little bags. And I'll tell you, just by having little tiny bags, you'll eat less. I'll show you that in just a minute. So do the 100-calorie packages actually work? They work for some people. This is another study done by Brian with these little bags. And what he found was, this is 4 small 100-calorie packages, and this is 1 large one. To get 400 calories, you have to open up 4 bags of this. In this one, it's all in 1 bag. So look at the red. If your BMI is less than 25 and your normal weight, what happens is it doesn't matter if there's 4 bags or 1 bag, you eat the same amount because you're eating according to satiety and hunger. Now, if you're overweight, this group that was over BMI of 25, if you gave them the small containers, it slowed them down. They ate about 175 calories. When you had the large one, they ate 350. It went up by 50% when you had the 1 big bag compared to having the little individual packages. So does it work? Yes, especially for people that are overweight, because we tend to eat not by satiety, but by desire. And we're going to talk about that more next week. So Brian did this study. It's one of my favorite studies. And you can see this right now. He rented a movie theater, and he had popcorn in big containers and huge containers. And then they watched the movie Payback by Mel Gibson for a couple of hours. This is what happened. This is the fresh popcorn. If you gave people a large bucket, they ate about 60. And if you gave them extra large, it was about 90. It went up by 50% with the big container. Now, the interesting thing is that you really don't want all that extra popcorn. And money's working against you because you say, here's the little box, and it's $20. And then here's the medium, it's $20.10. And here's the large, it's $20.11. Oh, give me the large. But when you do that, you tend to eat 50% more. This study is my favorite one because of this next part of it. He left some popcorn out for 10 days. How good is popcorn the next day? It gets kind of chewy. It's lost its crispness. And what happened with this then, 10-day-old popcorn, if he gave people a large bucket, they ate 40. So these people were pretty smart. This is 10-day-old popcorn. They ate less with this large bucket. But if you gave them an extra large bucket, people ate almost 50% more of 10-day-old nasty popcorn. This is a powerful thing if it can get us to eat more of something we don't even want. And I asked Brian one day, and I said, Brian, how did this even happen? And he said the really good popcorn, people would eat. And then all of a sudden the movie would start. And they just, ate throughout the movie. And then when you had the nasty 10-day-old popcorn, people would take a handful, oh, yuck. And then you wait 5 minutes and kind of forget, get wrapped up in the movie, take another handful, oh, that tastes really bad. And then they wait 5-10 minutes, oh, it's still bad. And they go, oh, who cares? And they just kept kind of munching on it throughout the movie. Eating chewy, 10-day-old, nasty popcorn, and people ate almost 50% more when they had the large container. That really ought to get our attention because if we can just eat less by having a smaller container that I put my hand into, then I win. I have less. And then we did this study with tall, thin glasses and short, fat glasses. It's Piaget's principle. We tend to see this more than we see this. And so when we asked these children, pour a glass of juice, what happened was the tall glass, they poured about 5 ounces. So they poured it, it filled up real quick, and they stopped. When they had the short, fat glass, they kept pouring and didn't notice it, but they ended up pouring 9 ounces instead of 5 ounces, just because of the shape of the glass. So we have to be aware of this. And the green is the estimated. How much do you think you poured? You asked the children. They both said about 7 ounces, about 7 ounces. They thought they poured the same amount, but they were fooled because of the shape of the glass. Now, the last thing we want to talk about today is the form of the food. There's a number of things we'll talk about here, but something changed about 70 years ago. And we're going to show you what happened. But the World Health Organization and the FDA made this guideline, eat less sugar. But they didn't talk about intrinsic sugar. They talk about added sugar, and we'll show you why. Less fiber, more sugar, fewer nutrients, processed foods, that's what they were talking about, eat less. And then the answer to this is more fiber, less sugar, more nutrients, eat whole foods. The World Health Organization said eat less than 10% of your calories from added sugar. Try and keep it down to 5% because 5% provides you an extra benefit. But it only counts on added sugar. The sugar you put in, the sugar you cook with, the sugar you bake with, the sugar in a soda, the sugar in a sauce. It doesn't include the sugar that's inside of fruit. If it's incorporated in the structure of the fruit, you can even take the fruit and puree it, and it still counts as whole fruit because nothing in, nothing out. It's still just the fruit. And milk, sugar, the same thing, vegetables. So decreasing added sugar. The form of the food makes a difference, and the U.S. government, the World Health Organization, caught that. If you just eat sugar, your body doesn't handle it well. The interesting thing is it's the same sugar, whether it's in a Hershey bar or it's in a fruit. Now, the difference is the package. They've lost all the fiber, lost all the phytonutrients in the candy bar, and your body doesn't handle it well. You just eat it, and it makes your blood sugar go up, and you overeat. But if it's in the fruit, the fiber, the phytonutrients, they tend to make you eat less. You get full faster, and you consume less food just by eating whole food. If you take applesauce, you can just kind of slurp the applesauce on down and just kind of drink it. But an apple, you got to chew it, and it's so hard to bite the apple and then chew the apple up, and it takes time. And we would just soon drink it instead of have to chew it. This is explaining why that happened. This is 1909, and this is 98, 2000. And what you see here in the little dotted line, that is how much carbohydrate people were eating. Carbohydrates started to decrease until about 1960, and then the carbohydrates, those little dots, went back up. The problem is there were different carbohydrates. These lines right here, these are the amount of fiber in the carbohydrates. So as the carbohydrates were going down from 1909 to 1960, the carbs went down and the fiber went down. Then in 1960, all of a sudden, we had these new guidelines, eat more carbohydrates. But what people ate was a lot of carbohydrate, and a fiber didn't keep up with it. So carbs went up, fiber didn't go up, and so we had these high-calorie, low-fiber, highly processed carbohydrate calories, and that is one of the big reasons. The form of the food that we eat makes a difference. If you eat a whole food, it fills you up. If you don't eat a whole food, it doesn't. Have you ever had like an Asian meal and it has white rice? And I sit there and eat for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I've just eaten all this white rice and I'm done. And then an hour later, I'm starting to get hungry, going, wait a minute, what's going on here? I just ate, 3 servings of white rice. Well, no fiber, the nutrients are gone, and so your body handles it very differently compared to eating whole food, whole rice. Uh-oh, Kathy, my thing's not exact. Can you flip it? My advancer's not advancing. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's going now. So what did we create with all this? We created Snackwells. What is Snackwells? Had no fat in it. What was it made of? White flour and white sugar. It came out and think, oh my goodness, a cookie finally. And so you eat this cookie, and the cookie is all white flour, white sugar, no fat, no fiber, no nutrients. And this is one of the things that came out of that. Carbohydrates started going up, but the fiber didn't. And I remember feeding this to my kids going, hey, here is a low-fat dessert. Eat what you want. I was at a friend's house one time, and she was fairly overweight, and she was eating an Angel Food cake. And she had like a third of it gone. I said, what are you doing? She said, it's okay. It's fat-free. I can eat all I want. I went, no, you can't. And so I fed this to my children, and they survived. They actually survived, and they have procreated now, and I have 6 grandchildren. And so this stuff is what we came up with when we went in the high-carb craze. We started eating high carbs with no nutrients, no fiber. The goal of this is satiety, satiation. You start eating, and the more you eat, eventually you get satiated. And then satiety continues on for a period of time, and then you start eating again. What we want to do is extend this period of time when we are satiated and satiety is still high. And so what we want to do is this. We want to move this line this way so that we stay satiated longer. What does that? What does that? Whole foods do that. We stay full longer when we eat a whole food. So what we talked about today was self-monitoring. We've talked about that, out of sight, out of mind. Smaller package size, inconvenience decreases it. Even what you call the food makes a difference. And then who you eat with affects how much you eat. All of these things can help us eat less without knowing it if we just pay attention to these visual cues, size of the plate, who's eating with us. We haven't even talked about eating less yet. We just talked about changing the dining environment at home, changing it away from home. And so here are some of the students that did all of these studies. And I want to thank them because really they work really hard. I come up with an idea, I give the idea to them, and then they run the study for weeks and months. So thanks to all these students. Thanks to all of you for showing up today and for coming online. And remember what we're doing this for. 1 Corinthians 6:19. We know that our body's not our own. We've been bought with a price. Our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Therefore, we're supposed to glorify God in these bodies. And being aware of this, what's happened, what do we do, how should we then live to take care of our temple of God, to think that the God of the universe that used to come down into this magnificent temple, the most beautiful building in all of Israel, and now he's living in these little flesh bodies. So we want to keep our bodies in good shape for that, not just so we'll be healthy, we'll live longer, we'll have a better life, but it's really God's desire because he's chosen to live inside of here. Okay, thanks. Next week, we're going to start talking about other things besides the dining environment and how to change things around us. Basically, to this point, what we've done is try to level the playing field and get back to where we were before the 60s and 70s. And plate size, kind of food, the kind of food we're eating, people we're eating with, all that stuff has changed in the last 50, 60 years. And so we've gotten there now. Hopefully you're practicing these things. And we're going to start talking about food cravings next week. What do you do with those? How do you handle helping yourself eat less in the midst of an abundance of food and food that you really crave? All right, thanks. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next week.